it's a great honor to finally be here at an event at the Kolo. So, without further ado, I want to introduce our guest speaker, our keynote, Shira Applebaum Maresky, who is a paramedic with Magen David Adom. In addition to being a nurse with Terran Clinics, she will tell her story. And then this is a great opportunity for everybody here to ask firsthand questions of a paramedic in terms of what she's spoken about, but also in terms of what it's like to be a paramedic, how the system operates, any questions you may have, including how our ambulance functions in the real-life scenario, because Vancouver has already donated one community ambulance, a mobile intensive care unit, which is the premier class of ambulance with the most life-saving equipment on it. But anyway, hand over the floor. Thank you for coming, Shira.
And yesterday, it was a beautiful, beautiful city. I'm definitely coming back, that's for sure. My name is Shira Applebaum Maresky, Israeli born and raised. I'm a paramedic stationed in Magen David Adom, Jerusalem. I have a bachelor's in emergency medicine and a master's in mass casualty and disaster management from Ben Gurion University in Beersheba. I've been a part of Magen David Adom for about 5 years. A year and a half ago, I joined the Magen David Adom National Disaster Response Team and trained with the Norwegian Red Cross to be part of a field hospital emergency response unit. I work as an ambulance driver and an instructor as well. Wednesday, March 23rd, about 2 months ago, after a busy night shift on the intensive care unit and little sleep, I went to my second job at Taran, a private emergency medical clinic founded by my father, Dr. David Applebaum, over 20 years ago, located across the street from the new upcoming Magen David Adom station in Jerusalem. The truth is, I was so exhausted that I was just waiting for 3 o'clock to come so I can go home and sleep before the next night shift. I usually don't work so many consecutive shifts, but since my husband was away on a business trip, I decided to keep myself busy with doing my favorite activity, work. It was getting close to 3, and I was getting ready to go home, when suddenly a familiar atmosphere of urgency filled the air. Within seconds, sirens started sounding, and my pager started to beep continuously. The message reads, "Mass casualty event, explosion by Central Bus Station in Jerusalem. All medics and paramedics rush to the scene. Be cautious, fear of second explosion." Thinking back, it's hard to specify how you know that there has been a pigua, a terrorist attack. You just know, and then you just act as you were trained. There's no thought process, only actions. I immediately started running down the stairs to the main Magen David Adom station, where I got a ride with a mobile intensive care unit to the explosion site. A busy location at all times of the day, which was literally a 40-second drive. There was a bus with broken windows, but not totally burnt. Thank God, I thought. The bomb wasn't on the bus. And then the chaos that we know so well begins. Ambulances, private cars, first responders on motorbikes, police, bomb squads, military forces, and firefighters all flood the scene. Although we arrived at the scene within a little over a minute, there were medics, soldiers, and civilians that just happened to be there during the explosion, treating the wounded as best as they could, and helping us carry the patients to the ambulances. In the corner of my eye, I can see Hanan doing CPR on an older woman. Immediately, an ambulance approaches and stops right next to them. The back doors open, the ambulance bed gets pulled out. Within seconds, Hanan, the injured woman, and 2 more volunteers are in the ambulance and on the way to the hospital. I hear my name being called, and when I turned around, Yosef, a paramedic that just moved to Jerusalem from New Jersey, not long ago, is bending down near an injured man not far away from the explosion site. I can see a bleed up by his upper thigh, and his abdomen seems injured. I run to him and see that he is conscious. I instruct a volunteer to dress and put pressure on the bleeding spot. Another ambulance stops right near us. Again, the back doors open, the ambulance bed gets pulled out, and they're on the way to the hospital. Ambulances come and go, and with every blink of my eye, more patients are taken to the hospital. Everything happens so fast and in an automatic mode. 4 minutes after the explosion, all critically injured patients were already on their way to the hospital, receiving first response treatment from the ambulance crew. This quick and efficient response is unfortunately a result of the vast experience that Magen David Adom Jerusalem has had with mass casualty events throughout the years. The scene is scanned to make sure no one is left behind. A couple of ambulances stay in the area until the scene is totally empty. 10 minutes after the explosion, the dispatcher already gives a chazlash order. Chazlash stands for Chazara L'Shigra, which means back to routine. Life is back to normal. Of course, not for the 38 people who were injured and the 49-year-old woman who was killed. The injured have just started their sometimes long passage to recovery. Life won't really go back to normal for hundreds of bystanders who might not know this yet, but will remember this day for the rest of their life. Nor for any of the emergency staff personnel. Every mass casualty event leaves a little scar, leaves a memory, and leaves lessons learned for the events to come. I went home, showered, and watched the news. I even caught a few hours of sleep before my next night shift. So how did I, Shira, end up in this line of work? Tuesday, September 9th, 2003, almost 8 years ago, I was sitting in my house doing last-minute preparations for my sister's wedding the next day. My father and sister went to a coffee shop to pick up some coffees for the whole family while we stayed at home, continued working on the seating plans. Suddenly, I heard a blast, and seconds later, the sirens. I had a bad feeling, and the breaking news proved my worries right. The bomb was at Café Hillel, where my father and sister had gone. My brother Yitzchak and I ran to the car and were at the scene within minutes. While looking for our father and sister, we saw injured and dead people laying all over the place. I remember when I arrived at the scene, I felt helpless. I felt like I had to do something, to help somehow, and try to save someone, but I couldn't. I didn't know how. My father, Rabbi Dr. David Applebaum, was the director of emergency room in Shari Tzedek Hospital, as well as the director of Terem. Terem is a chain of private emergency medical clinics in Jerusalem, founded by my father. He worked in Magen David Adom for many years, after moving to Israel from Cleveland, Ohio, back in 1981, after having finished his residency in emergency medicine at Mount Sinai Hospital. My older sister, Navah, spent every waking moment helping and entertaining young cancer patients as part of her national services. Her biggest dream was to find a cure for cancer. I lost both of them that night, my father and my older sister. After that dreadful night, I decided I never wanted to feel helpless again. I decided to continue in their footsteps and devote the rest of my life to saving lives. I'd like to pause at this time to detail a few of my father's innovations at Magen David Adom. When my father made Aliyah to Israel, he approached the Jerusalem Magen David Adom chief looking for employment. After a one-day trial, he was assigned to operate, staff, and later become head of the first mobile intensive care unit in Jerusalem, and the medical director of Magen David Adom Jerusalem. He introduced a constant review of medical practice and an assessment of quality of care. He revolutionized the mobile intensive care units, bringing Magen David Adom services into the 21st century. My father conceived and developed a system in which streptokinase is administered by a physician-led team in an ambulance before reaching the hospital, a system which has saved many lives. Streptokinase is a medication that dissolves clots and is given to patients that are going through a heart attack. This was the first time that streptokinase was given in a pre-hospital environment. He helped write the paramedic training curriculum, and he taught the paramedic trainees. He suggested and pushed for adding automated external defibrillators on the regular basic life support ambulances, and still today, these automated external defibrillators play a critical role in saving lives of patients with cardiac arrest, without needing to wait for the mobile intensive care units. I have vivid memories how often, during off hours, when my father's pager went off, he was at the door within seconds, whether it was to a car accident, a heart attack patient, or a terrorist attack. During the day, the late hours of the night, and on Shabbat and Chagim. There's a saying, choose a job you love, and you'll never have to work a day in your life. I truly believe that I'm exactly where I belong, and that just maybe Confucius wrote that saying about me. The day-to-day life in Magen David Adom is hard. It can be very stressful as well. We work long hours for little pay, in the heat, the rain, and the snow, carrying patients, doing chest compressions, and really breaking up a sweat. With all the difficulties, physical and emotional, I honestly believe that working as a paramedic is the most fulfilling job ever, and it's all because of the miracles. The little newborn baby taking his first breath of air in your bare hands, the 39-year-old whose chest you pumped for over 40 minutes, and a week later walks himself out the hospital. The car you see on the side of the road, all bashed up, preparing to see the worst, when two 18-year-old kids crawl out with nothing but a scratch. Holding a healthy baby in your arms, and remembering that when you showed up in his house 3 weeks ago, just 2 weeks after he was born, his heart stopped beating, and no one thought there was a chance he'd survive. No matter the age, the race, or the religion of our patient, the lives that are saved, the miracles are what keep me and all the Magen David Adom family excited and passionate about coming to work every day. Magen David Adom, you might know, is a very special organization. Our staff includes a combination of workers, trainees, and volunteers, as well as a combination of Jews, Muslims, and Christians. We all get along really well. Really, it's not just a cliche. It's the only place I know of in Israel where there's really no tension between the Jews and the Arabs, the ultra-Orthodox and the secular. When we put on this uniform and we enter an ambulance, all other issues are irrelevant. We focus completely on our work and on having fun in the process. Since I became a Magen David Adom worker, I've been told countless stories of my father from my fellow EMTs, paramedics, and doctors that worked on my father's side. They tell me how my father was loved, appreciated, and honored as a teacher, as a friend, and as a team member. When I hear these stories, I feel proud and try to learn from him through my colleagues who worked with him when I was just a little kid. People often ask me how I'm able to go to a bombing site after what I've been through. If the sight of a coffee shop after a terrorist attack or the sirens of an ambulance throw me back to my own personal tragedy. And my answer is always no, absolutely not. What I have learned from my own tragedy is that there are things that are not in my hands to change. I could not have stopped the terrorists from attacking the coffee shop on the evening when my father and sister were killed. I cannot stop the car accidents, the heart attacks, the seizures. These are facts that only God can control and understand. But when my pager goes off, when I'm called to help as a Magen David Adom paramedic, I know that God has given us the opportunity to change, to make a change. That someone out there needs our help. Someone is waiting for me or one of my colleagues to treat their life-threatening condition, to deliver their baby, or to just take away the pain. This is in our hands to change, literally. This is our chance to make this world better, to stop someone else from hurting. This is our chance to help save a life. Perhaps I was wrong. When I hear the sirens or get called to a site with many casualties, I actually do think of my father, but I do not think of him at his last moment. I think of how well and efficient he would have handled this crisis, and his memory pushes me to become the most dedicated, passionate, and focused paramedic that I'm capable of being. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to share my personal experience with you. I wish you all health, peace, and thank you very much. If anyone has questions.
Yeah. Does anyone have questions for Shira?
I have a question. What's the percentage of Muslims and Christians who are working with you, more or less?
I'd say around 15%.
15?
Yeah.
Some of them do it for
Mostly
national
Jews.
service as well, right?
Yes, we have some Muslims or Christians that don't do the army service. Instead, they come to Magen David Adom and they do a year of like national service, like girls do, like religious girls do. And they volunteer for a whole year. They go in ambulances every day.
I have a second question.
Sure.
You're a master in emergency, what's it exactly the name?
In mass casualty event and disaster management.
It's the only master of its kind in Israel, or
There are two programs. There's also a program in Tel Aviv University,
is there anything in North America as far as you know?
Columbia. That's what I've heard. The director of the program in Ben Gurion University got his doctorate in Columbia. Professor Ashkenazi.
So people study first, what do they study for the BA?
Well, my bachelor's is in emergency medicine. That's where I was trained to be a paramedic. And the master's is following
Emergency.
that bachelor's, but you can come with anything. You can be a nurse, I had nurses, I had doctors, I had security, people who were in charge of security in different, in like small communities, in settlements.
In your profession in Israel, do most people, is it like a lifelong career, or is there a burnout period that, people only last 10, 15 years or something like that?
Most of the paramedics that work in Magen David Adom now are paramedics for over 10 years. There are some people that sometimes it gets hard for them and they find a different job, but most of the paramedics have been there for a long time. Yeah. It's a great job. It's hard, but it's really fun.
Very fulfilling, I suppose.
Very fulfilling.
I have a question about your adopted uncle.
Oh, yeah, sure. Oh, okay. Tell the story?
Sure.
At the evening of the bombing in Café Hillel, where my father and sister were killed, there was a story in the newspapers that two Arab doctors went to the scene to identify my father. These two doctors are, one is a Muslim and one is a Druze. They work in Terem, at the clinic that my father founded, and worked at Magen David Adom as well on the mobile intensive care units. I know them since I'm a little kid, and they're part of my family, even though they're Arabs. And everyone was very surprised that the people who came to identify my father were Arabs on the night of the explosion. But they're like family. We work together happily.
It's possible.
It is. It's possible for sure. Yeah. Is it hard people well? Yeah, it's always hard. You see car accidents and people that are really injured. It's very hard, but you think of the goal. You try to help them, so you don't really think about everything around.
We've been to the Terem clinics, both of them, and it's tremendous, the efficiency, and the fact that you can't get much done on Shabbat, and you suddenly can get everything done there, is a great blessing.
Yeah, well, in Terem, on Shabbat, all the staff is not Jewish.
Yeah, that's right.
So there's no problem for anyone to come and get any medical treatment that might not be might not be an emergency, but there's no problem with breaking the Shabbat. So all the staff is non-Jewish on Shabbos.
Right. An excellent staff, by the way.
Right now, it contains me, my brother, and my sister. We all work there, and my older brother. So it's like a family.
What about your husband?
Excuse me?
What about your husband? He also works there?
No,
No?
he's a lawyer. No, he's my whole family's in medical profession besides him. It's okay. We need some change. Yeah.
What's your thought on one that how a person should react when life is not in your hand?
Sorry, come.
What's your thought on a person, on how should a person react when life escapes your hands?
Well, you try your best not to let it escape. But if you let it escape, I guess it just wasn't meant to be. There's someone else who makes the plans, and we just try to help them keep life as much as we can.
Is it hard for you to disconnect from your job in your home?
Right now, while I'm here?
No, I mean.
Oh, when I go home? Not really. I get home and I take my uniform off, but I still talk to my friends from work and how was your day and what did you have and what did you learn from the different calls that you had, and we hang out. All my colleagues were very, very good friends, so it sort of comes home with you, but sometimes you need to just disconnect and talk about other things just so you have a little bit of a break.
Do you see yourself being a paramedic in 10 years, 20 years from now?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we have in Magen David Adom, we have a lot of women that are paramedics, that are ambulance drivers. Most of them are also religious, so you might have to take some breaks, I hope. But yeah, you have volunteers, they help you, you don't have to carry. They're gentlemen sometimes. Yeah, sorry.
I know that recently there's been some issues with the whole medical system in Israel, and doctors kind of having problems coping with the pressure. Has that at all affected Magen David Adom, and how do you guys cope with it, and what are the kind of challenges that you face in, under funding and all those issues?
Well, it doesn't really affect us because we're not related to the doctors, but we do have a mobile intensive care unit with a doctor every shift. So now it's a problem because it's sort of hard to staff that ambulance. But other than that, we're totally independent. We have nothing to do with the doctors, and that's why they're paramedics. So if the doctors can't come, then we can do sort of part of their job, at least the beginning of it.
So are you solely funded by donations, or there's any government involvement in there?
Just by donations.
No, there's some government, but that's
there you
not a
go.
lot.
Sorry, he knows those things.
It's not a lot.
The percentage would be like 5–10%?
I don't want to misquote, so I'm not sure, but I will tell you that it's kind of a leap of faith. The government basically figures that they'll contribute a little something, and the rest of the world will kick it in, and it's very much a leap of faith for the balance. And then there's some things like there's just so the wish ambulance, for example, that's something that's
all
like
donated.
completely over and above that the government would have even thought of that project. That's just people who got creative and said, you know what, it's great to save a life, but we also need to kind of preserve life till the very, very end, even if there is a coming end. That's a magnificent project.
And that's all donated, 100%
All
of it.
All donated.
Part of it is a matter of tradition, simply because this charity is one of the main charities in the country. Indeed, it was before the country. It's an older charity than the state itself. So when you have something that's working, and that's something, it's a very essential service, but it's already being, so to speak, taken care of by donations. The government puts its funds into security, police, and all that. But most of the budget comes from donations, especially for equipment. All the ambulances are donated, are bought from donations. The only services that Magen David Adom provides for money is at little settlements and towns. Sometimes the services are leased out. But also, it's not part of the government, actually. It's a little bit like a...
It's the municipality of the...
Crown.
It's a little bit like a crown corporation.
Curious, how does Magen David Adom interact with the Red Cross sometimes in Israel whenever you run into them, or the Red Crescent?
Yeah. So in 2005, Magen David Adom became part of the Red Cross, the International Red Cross. We were trained by them, and that's how we have our National Disaster Response Team, and we train with them. So members of the National Disaster Response Team are sent to Red Cross Red Cross in different countries. So I went to the Norwegian Red Cross, and I was trained as a field hospital emergency response unit member, and we send them to different countries to do different emergency response units. And with the Red Crescent, we work sometimes together with them. If they need to bring a patient into the country, and they can't, I mean into the country, and into the Israeli borders, we meet them at the checkpoints, and we take the patients from them. We treat their patients, and we take them, if they need to go into Palestinian borders, then they come and pick them up from the checkpoints. And I think a month ago, we trained together with the Jordanian Red Cross, because we're waiting for an earthquake to come, so we're training for it. And they're, the area that's by the Dead Sea, by Yam HaMelech, is Jordanian and Israeli territory together. So we trained together to build an IDP camp, an indisplaced persons camp. And we worked, it was a whole drill together. We had dinner together. We were there 2 days, and they taught us how to build the tents that they bring, and we taught them how we take care of mass casualty incidents. So we have protocols of working together in case of a disaster that will be in the area that we work together. Yeah.
There's another service of Magen David Adom that I didn't know about until I saw a YouTube video of a Haitian professional dancer who lost his legs in the earthquake, and apparently MDA fitted him with prostheses and went through the whole rehabilitation process to train him, and he's back dancing professionally again today. Can you tell us more about that rehabilitation?
That was a service that was out. It didn't belong to Magen David Adom, but Magen David Adom, I heard the story as well. They took that guy and they coordinated with this other company that were taking care of prostates.
This is for Roy. Oh. How are we doing on a fundraiser for a second?
Okay, so just to detract for a moment from Shira, we have one. So there's a couple of ambulances from Greater Vancouver already in service. There's one in Paramedic, which was funded by a family on the North Shore. There's one that there's a guy who was living in Vancouver very, very modestly his whole life. People sort of felt a little bit too modestly, and he was kind of saving and scrounging. And when he died, he donated all his money for an ambulance, so he scrounged while living in order to benefit again when he died. His name is Mossy, remember his last name?
Raphael.
Mossy Raphael. So I always like to tell his name because, you know, you can never judge a person. He could be sort of appear like a miser, and yet he's saving up for something bigger and better, so that's amazing. He died at Louis Var, and then he donated an ambulance to Modi'in, and there was actually a dedication. His family is partly in the UK and partly here in the British Embassy, which is actually a dedication not too long ago. We have our own community ambulance, and when I say our own, we have another one that we got through broadly based mom and pop donations, so $5 here, $10 there. That took us 2.5 years, and it's up and running and circulating in Tel Aviv, and I have some stats on the numbers of casualties and the types of calls it's been on, if you guys are interested after.
You should mention how much the ambulance is.
It's in the slideshow, but it's $125,000 when the exchange rate is favorable, otherwise it's 130, but right now the exchange is on. Yeah, it's a lot of mums and pops. And we're about halfway through our second broadly based community ambulance, and just one other tidbit on that, and I'll return to Shira. The doors on our ambulances, we're really fortunate today as a kind of a community of communities here. We have people from the Jewish community, we have people from the Christian community, and that's one of the really cool things about tonight is that it's a gathering. And because there was really very strong participation from both sides, we went to our Christian friends and we said, well, here's a door, you get to dedicate whatever you want on the door so that they can have really an equal share in it. And so one door was chosen to be dedicated to the staff and volunteers of Magen David Adom, and I have a screenshot of the door I can show you. And the other one is dedicated to the unit from our very first guest speaker. the MIA, missing, search and rescue missing in action unit, those are our people. So, long answer to say about halfway through our second broadly based.
How many ambulances are you sustaining?
Vancouver or abroad?
Abroad, worldwide.
That's a good question. Yeah.
Mr. Feingold gave us a number. I know it was 900. 900?
I don't know the answer, but I can get back to you. I don't want to give the wrong answer.
No.
So, I don't know the answer off the top of my head.
Good number.
But yeah, the interesting thing is, of course, all the sexy stuff is to buy a brand new spanking ambulance, which is small, but there's a lot of maintenance costs in the existing ones: insurance, wear and tear on the tires, fuel, all that kind of stuff.
Equipment inside.
Equipment inside, yeah. So our ambulance, that $125,000 figure, actually did include the defibrillator. It's a wireless defibrillator. It's supposed to be like super snazzy, incredible.
It makes life easy.
Yeah, maybe you can talk about what that is, because that itself was $30,000 more.
So it's a defibrillator that has also a monitor, has an EKG, it has a blood pressure, everything is electronic, and it basically is wireless. So you can have a patient with all the wires on him with a little unit, and you can take him down the stairs without having to push in between the railing and the chair and falling and slipping, and you can hold it like around one floor down and you can still see how your patient's doing. It makes life much easier.
And the other cool supply story, which I really like, is it was in the slideshow there. So people of the Netherlands are relatively a smaller country with fewer donations versus, say, Canada and the United States. And Magen David Adom was having trouble with sort of the less sexy projects, the supplies that are less attractive when you say to people, like rubber gloves. You walk up to a donor and you say, I'd like $18 for 100 rubber gloves. That's not exactly the same sort of impression as saying you have a share in the ambulance. So what they did was they did a marketing ploy where they said, okay, well, what we're going to do is we're going to make rubber gloves our national project. And every blue rubber glove that you see being used on Magen David Adom in Israel comes from the Netherlands. And they like that marquee that if you see a rubber glove, we paid for, which I think is a really cool twist. Questions?
Well, it depends what you want to do. If you're a paramedic, it takes 3 years in university, or you can do it without a bachelor's degree, and then it's a year and 8 months. And there are volunteers that do different courses. So the first course is a 60-hour course, which is done after grade 9. It's a 60-hour course during school vacation. And then there's a 90-hour course. And there's a driving course, which is 220 hours. And then there is that's the medic and driver course. So it depends what you want to do, but you can do 60 hours and you can still go on the ambulance and become a volunteer.
Magen David Adom actually has a program for people from other countries that can go volunteer in Israel to work on the ambulance as period students. So right after high school, before you get into university, you go on that program and they'll train you. All you need to know is how to speak Hebrew, and if you don't know that, you take some courses they have. Yeah, basically they have full time like same you do, and then they'll train you. And it's a 10-day course, I think, to start with, and that gives you a certain level.
If there are
problems, how are they dealt with?
well, we have ambulances there as well,
Right.
and they are bulletproof. And we take care of a patient no matter what. If there's a car accident, there was a car accident this week with by a settlement which is on the West Bank, and there were Palestinian injured and injured Jews, and we take care of both of them equally. Same. We treat them, we take them to our hospitals if they're critically injured, unless they're not allowed to come into the country for some reason. And then we take them to a hospital in the West Bank. And we work together with the Red Crescent, so they can take a patient as well.
But you're saying you have bulletproof ambulances?
We have bulletproof ambulances, yes.
Have you ever been attacked by
An ambulance was attacked in Jerusalem. They were lynched and burnt. When was
Yeah,
that?
there's a picture on Noni's wall of an
Yeah.
ambulance that's completely aflame.
There was a driver inside with a volunteer, and then they were coming to a call in the Muslim quarter. It was during the first Intifada, and when they came, lots of hostile people were banging on the ambulance, and eventually they lit it up, but they got out because one of the volunteers of Magen David Adom that lived in the Muslim quarter, an Arab, helped them out. He rescued them from the ambulance. So there's been rocks and there's been things like that, but it's just for our protection.
So interesting side note to that with the Canadian angle. A couple years ago, so Magen David Adom was equipping its paramedics with bulletproof vests, helmets, all sorts of stuff against that. And a couple years ago, somebody, Canadian resident, filed a petition through one of the commissions of the CRA and filtered up through the courts, and they were trying to deny Magen David Adom tax charitable status because the argument was that we were funding military equipment like bulletproof vests and helmets. And for a brief moment in time, the government did in fact suspend our charitable status until we fought it in court and we won. But it's very dicey for us right now in Canada. Mind you, under the current administration, things are a little safer, but it's still a problem. So what Magen David Adom in Canada has decided to do to kind of avoid that is to stay away from that. There's plenty of things that we can fund, and so the American Friends or some other countries are funding that just to get away from that. But it's a reality that that's part of the equipment that needs to happen.
Now we always tell this story how we lost the charitable status because supposedly one of the points that was made that we're supplying arms or armament because bulletproof vest is somehow considered armament. But what's interesting, what's really interesting this year about this story is that now Canadian paramedics have vests. But they mature to understand that that's sometimes required for a paramedic, even though he doesn't carry a gun. He may still be fine.
We don't wear them all the time. We only wear them when there's a shooting incident or in Sderot. Every time there's a missile attack, they have to wear them in that area. But we don't wear them all the time. They're in the ambulance. Yeah, you're my best student.
Can you repeat the question?
Stand up and then say it out loud. Oh, which injured people we take first? So we take the most injured, but that have a chance to live. Because in a bombing inside a building, if someone's really, really critically injured and is already dead, then we're not going to start CPR on that patient, but we'll take the next patient who might have a chance to survive. But thank God, in Jerusalem, there are so many ambulances that come so fast that all the critically injured people are taken really, really fast. So we don't have to think about that so much. Which, I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's just from practice and from having so many bombings.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.